So I just got this from the menus.
Should be a thing where. Okay, so here's the page. Wait, that's odd. Yeah, that's down. Shouldn't make any difference. Yeah, it's.
Thanks, Trevor. Okay, it is 6:01 and we have a quorum here, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. For those that choose to do so, you can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, or you can stay seated for silent meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first two items on the agenda are approval of the minutes from the January 2025 regular monthly business meeting, and then approval of minutes from the February 2025 regular monthly business meeting. We unfortunately did not have a quorum last month of people that had attended the previous months, and that's why we have both. In here. Are we okay with voting on these together, or do you want to do them separately?
I need to abstain still from.
Oh, okay, then let's go ahead and do them separately, since you'll still need to be
You
abstaining.
might have different counts.
Yeah. So as far as the January 2025 regular monthly business meeting minutes, do we have a motion to approve those? Thank you, Mike H. And Barbara, you seconded? Okay, are there any changes, discussion, questions about those minutes? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from January 2025, please raise your hand. And there is one abstention from Tony. Okay. We'll move on to the February minutes then. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the February 2025?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Mike P. Is there a second? Thanks, Alish. Any discussion, corrections, changes on the February minutes? Okay. All in favor of approving the February 2025 regular monthly business meeting minutes, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye. Abstain?
Oh, and Marcia is an abstention.
I have to abstain and it looks like Bill was up there.
Okay,
Do we have?
We have enough time.
so we have, okay, if you were an aye, raise your hand real quick so we can get it.
6 or 9, 8.
5.
3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
so we're fine.
Okay, so we're good.
Okay, and then 3 abstentions. So that passes as well. And now we have a public input session. A couple of months ago, we passed the rules on public input to allow 3 minutes for anybody at the beginning and the end. And the board can move to approve more time, but that's where we're at. Do we have any public input?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Nate Heyer, and I have been employed with the Guilderland Public Library for a whirlwind 1.5 years. I am commenting tonight on the recommendation by the library director to the board that my position be abolished. To begin, I would like to thank the board for considering my request for a severance package should I be laid off. This would be a lifeline for my family to allow me adequate time to job search after a shocking and undeserved blow. Also, I do not envy your deliberations tonight, and I wish you all the best. Now, I would like to share with the community that my treatment by my fellow administrators here has been unprofessional and inhumane. I was given extremely short notice to seek other work despite having an exemplary record of service here and numerous active projects. The total lack of transparency and respect I was afforded in regard to my layoff and at other times in my employment impacts not just myself, but all the staff. It is the position of the director that he can run this library without 2 assistant directors. Given the frenetic pace of work in the admin suite and the countless times we have needed to ask the patience of staff about even the most basic matters, I disagree. Frankly, the decision to lay me off is ludicrous. My tenure here has been marked by rapid progress on previously stubborn problems, completion of projects left open for years, and a surge in staff morale. I led the library through a period of intense turmoil and change tirelessly as the interim director. I have been nothing but kind, reliable, open, hardworking, and enthusiastic in my support of the new director as he has gotten up to speed and my fellow assistant director throughout my tenure here. I believe this layoff will be damaging to the organization. That said, the trust has been shattered between myself and the other leaders here by their conduct and rhetoric. This leaves the board with a very difficult decision. Whatever you decide, I am here to ensure that the record is straight on who exactly is responsible for whatever comes next for this organization. Pete Petruski and Natalie Hurteau have failed to heed the lessons of this organization's history, and so it is they who should bear the full brunt of the consequences, not the staff. Now, to that staff, it has been absolutely delightful working with you all. Your kind words have been a light in the dark. Thank you for your trust, effort, creativity, and perseverance. I will close my remarks with hard-won leadership advice honed through my trial by fire here. First and foremost, respect is something that is earned through respectable behavior. Second, fear and uncertainty are not good motivators, but rather the greatest productivity killers of all. Third, trust is the fuel that powers effective change management, not force. Fourth, feedback is always an opportunity, even if it stings a little at times. Fifth, mentorship, active listening, and training are the answer to most performance issues. Sixth, leadership requires so much more than a good speech or a slick suit. It is about the relationships you build and the care, reliability, service, and integrity you demonstrate day in and out, faithfully and with humility. Thank you to everyone for your time and attention. I am providing a copy of my remarks to the board for inclusion with the public record.
Thank you very much, Nate.
Yeah.
And so the board will have time to discuss it since it's a specific personnel matter during our executive session. Is there any additional public comments?
I have some comment cards and emails. I'm gonna do the comment cards first. One was need more new books. This one, forgive me, it's a little hard to read. Books from Colony Library on return here do not show titles in the system's receipts, say only item accepted. Please make titles visible on receipts, please. Next one, everyone here is so friendly and helpful. The folks at the circulation desk always seem to have the universe of information at their fingertips. So friendly. Next, I appreciate you hosting the Rainbow Reads Book Club and advertising it on the front. The world needs to be accepting of all people, and all people need a book club they can be a part of. Thank you. Last comment card, it's been a while since the new book selection choices. Very few new books available. I have a note left in the community room thanking our, says, thanks, Tom, you're the best. Everything worked out great. This was for Tom Nucci, one of our IT assistants, and it's for him. And another email, hello, sorry, it's down here. Dear Mr. Petruski, my name is Jean Lemire and I am in the US on a leave of absence from my teaching job in Germany due to some issues with my eyes. While I wait news on an eye study I was asked to apply for, I visit my mother every day at the nursing facility next door to your wonderful library, the GPL. I wanted to let you know how friendly, nice, and helpful every single one of your employees has been, not only to me, but to everyone with whom they come in contact. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. I'm here in a community I don't know well, and yet I have made to feel like I am special every time I enter or leave this lovely library. Trust me, please, when I say I have spent time in many libraries around the world, and yours is by far one of the best, if not the best facility with wonderful and kind employees. I can't quite explain how stopping in before or after I see my mom next door calms me down and reminds me why I love libraries so much. From the bottom of my heart, many, many thanks to you all and your dedicated staff. And finally, I have this email to read. To the Guilderland Public Library Board of Trustees. We are writing as two former employees at the Guilderland Public Library. Maria Buell recently retired from GPL and after 28 years as a librarian and department head. Eileen Williams retired in 2012 after 16 years as a reference and outreach librarian. She's also a Guilderland resident. As interested former employees, we often watch the proceedings of the board meeting to stay abreast of what's happening at the library. After watching the discussion toward the end of the February 27th meeting, we feel compelled to write to express our support of the proposal from trustee Vice President Alicia Melchiadi. Her suggestion to craft and issue a statement that reaffirms the library's commitment to providing equal access and welcoming spaces, along with fostering diverse views and intellectual freedom, is an excellent one. It just so happens that 1 year ago, the American Library Association Council issued a statement of its core values, highlighting these 5 critical areas: access, equity, intellectual freedom and privacy, public good, and sustainability. You are all trustees of a library that adheres to these principles of the ALA, and we urge every board member to read the statement we've included in the link here, which we hope can be printed and shared with each of you as part of our public comment. These 5 areas represent the core tenets of the public library profession, and in our minds bear repeating. No, make that yelling from the mountaintop. Ms. Melchiadi's proposal is a timely opportunity to get the much-needed message out to the entire Guilderland community that this library stands by its purpose and mission. In closing, we'd like to add that if a library trustee doesn't agree with these core values and is unwilling to vigorously defend them, they have no business being a trustee of a public library. Sincerely, Maria Buell, former Department Head, Community Engagement and Outreach Services, and Eileen Williams, former Reference and Outreach Librarian.
Amy, could you read those 5 points again, please?
Which I, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Access, equity.
Just, I can't write, I have
I'll close it.
access, equity.
Intellectual freedom and privacy was all one.
Are you copying these?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause
Public good and sustainability.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any additional public comment?
What did they link to? It is the ALA's statement. I apologize, I don't have that readily available. It's, yeah, you can pull it up.
And as for the board and those who weren't able to attend last month, you'll find that we're going to be referencing this under old business and talking through a statement of support to our community. Thank you very much to everyone who submitted public comments. We are moving on then to personnel actions. I'm going to read all 3 if we are okay with discussing them as a whole. So the personnel actions are to approve the appointment of Sydney Geary, part-time library page with a start date of March 5th, 2025. To approve the appointment of Ivan Chan, part-time library page, start date of March 5th, 2025. And to accept the resignation of David Gilliam, Fiscal Officer 1, effective March 18th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve those personnel actions?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you. And Alicia is seconding, so Mike P. and then Alicia. Do we have discussion, questions, comments surrounding those? Yes, Barbara.
I'm just saddened to see David go. He's been such a long time worker and so loyal. He's helped us through about 4 or 5 fiscal officer transitions. And I just really wish him well and whatever his endeavors are for the future. But Dave, if you're listening, we couldn't have had a better guy. Thank you. Here, second.
Any additional comments? All in favor of approving those 3 personnel actions as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And no abstentions. We are on to George for the treasurer's report for 2025, February 2025.
All right, does everybody have the statement? And it's gonna be a very short report. I kind of feel like a failure because there's just not a lot of interesting things to talk about on the report. Or maybe that's the definition of success. So on the balance sheet, you know, it's pretty much exactly what we expected. Cash lines 1 and 2 went down by 273,000. That happens just about every month that we don't get a tax levy payment in, and it approximates the net loss of 282,000 on the next page. I think all of the other balances are pretty consistent with the month before. And on the statement of revenue and expenses, it's pretty much following the pattern. I think the only thing that's a little bit different is the library is becoming more fully staffed. So when you look at salaries and wages, it's almost right on budget. It's almost exactly on budget. We're still very favorable on a year-to-date basis. And for the month on line 27, the total operating expenses are about 16,000 favorable. And interest and investment income is a little bit under budget. We did not, for whatever reason, at least as of a couple of days ago, receive the Broadview statement, although it wouldn't have much because there weren't any CDs that matured, so there wouldn't have been interest. So when they do mature, we'll record the interest and that can be back on budget. On a year-to-date basis, you can see that we continue to operate favorably to budget. On line 31, the right-hand most number. And there's small variances in operating expenses that we've talked about before, so I don't think there's anything too remarkable on that. Are there questions that I can answer?
Silence is excellence, George.
Just, I guess. Do I just do the check register quick?
Yes, let's.
So it's a short check register because our last meeting was so late in the month, so it's really only, I think we figured 20 days, so it's not a full month, and February was short to begin with. And, if there's specific questions on any of the line items, looking down at about the fifth item, Albright Aquariums, David was actually showing me how to print some checks, and I guess you can probably tell we had a couple of little issues that we avoided 4 checks or so. When things don't work, they don't work, so.
It's like half of the line items.
What's that?
Half the line items are just printers.
Right.
Yeah. It happens. And we did not have an investment report sent out because we were waiting on the Broadview, but when we do get that, I think I'll just send it out and for everybody's information.
George, the rooftop unit repairs, is that, I remember having all kinds of problems with the roof.
I know Pete knows more about that than I do because we talked about that.
I think so. It's related to the HVAC units, so the heating and cooling of the building.
Oh, okay.
We've resolved it.
That was all the roof issues?
No,
Oh.
That's not,
just the roof issues in the check register.
Part of it.
yeah,
I was like, whoa.
that would be good if it was only 2,000.
I
And
know.
that would have been a great solution.
There's another one too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or for George about the check register?
Thank you, George.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Do we have a motion to approve the check register?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Marcia. Is there a second? I'm giving it to Bill. He's who I saw first. Okay. All in favor of approving the check register for February 2025?
Aye.
Okay, it doesn't appear, no opposed, no abstentions. Great. Next up, we have to meet with our directors and department heads reports for February 2025.
Thank you. A relatively short report from me as well. Again, not a lot of ground to cover since our last meeting. One thing I will note that as you read through the director's report, you may notice that it's missing the IT department report and some of the stats are still from January. We were trying to make our deadline to get the packets out to everyone, so those unfortunately couldn't get in time. But I will include them in next month's report, the previous reports. a lot of what I accomplished and what the team worked on this month will be covered in some of our committee reports, so I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Budget is the biggest thing that we're working on this month. A huge thank you to our treasurer, George Wilhelm, for helping me pull together our budget for this year. In your packet, there is 2 copies of the budget, one which we will speak to in the finance committee section, one of which is the detail level budget, and one of which is the roll-up, which is what the public sees during the vote. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as it comes. I would like to echo Barbara's thank you to David Gilliam. David, his last day was this Tuesday. Wonderful asset to the library, really stepped up a number of times in a number of ways, and he was so gracious working up until 5 o'clock on his last day. And I came and jokingly said, "Why are you still here?" I would have left at lunchtime. But no, he stayed to make sure that everyone who was still here with the team was able to continue his work in his absence. So a huge thank you to David. We are in the midst of interviews for our open library business manager position with the future. We hope to make an offer soon, get that person onboarded, hopefully before George goes on vacation. And that will be a huge, help to our staff. You may have noticed that we are taking book donations today. Book donations have officially begun. Thank you to all the board members who have volunteered to supervise, to assist. It's a huge help for us. I know the past couple times I've talked about donations, I remarked I was worried about throwing a party and nobody coming. People are coming. We are getting donations. We're getting lots of questions about the upcoming book sale. There's a lot of interest, a lot of pent up community need that we are addressing. So that's very welcome and I'm looking forward to it. And the volunteers, if any of them are watching tonight, or if any of them hear me in the other room, they have been doing wonderful work. We're really pleased with. It's always just such a huge commitment for people to come and do this for free. So we appreciate it. And then I know it might not feel this way tonight when we're getting snow or freezing rain, but summer is rapidly approaching and summer reading will be here before we know it. Summer reading is our Super Bowl. It's every library's Super Bowl. I sat in on the planning session with the public services team and the energy in that room was absolutely electric. The team is very excited about this year's summer reading, had a lot of good ideas, so we're looking forward to it. With that, I will leave the remainder for the committee reports.
Okay, thank you very much. First that we have on here is the finance committee. I don't know if Tony was presenting the budget or if someone else is, how do you want to approach this?
Well, first of all, we did meet, obviously, and we did go for the budget. Pete already thanked George, but I also like to thank Pete and George for putting together this budget. Previous years, we didn't go through line by line by line, tweak and whatever else. This year, we did not. We had several questions regarding computer replacement costs. If you look at the full budget, the attorney's fees and something else.
Workers'
Workers'
compensation.
comp, yeah. Pete and George went back, researched it, it remained unchanged. So essentially, they gave us a clean budget to begin with. We are looking for the full tax levy as on there. I don't think there's anything else. I guess that was, well, I'll come back to the budget. The rest of the meeting, the audit has been finished for 21 and 22. George will present that at a later time. Going forward, to avoid falling behind, we may propose, we'll probably propose doing 3-year audits at a time, batching them together. It's not going to save us any money, but we'll just spread that cost out over the years in which the audit applies to. That's all. I'll budget for it that way. I guess that was it. So we, as far as a committee, had nothing really to contribute about changing the budget. We thought it was good as is. So if there are any questions, if people have had time to look through it, we'd be more than happy to answer those now.
So there wasn't any like major notable changes?
No.
Forward.
There were a few things that we questioned. But again, after going back and researching it and determining the one-time cost and adjusting this or that and the other, we thought it was pretty clean. It was clean. It is clean. Thank you. Thanks, George and Pete. That made it much easier this year than in years past.
The big item was the health insurance.
Yeah.
Expected. Everybody seems to be having that type of dynamic these days.
It's worth noting that because our health insurance enrollment is in the middle of the year, it's in November and December, it comes in halfway through our budget. So for the first half of the year, we know what the costs are going to be. For the second half of the year, we have to do projections. This year, the increases were between 10 and 15%. We're expecting more like 13 to 17% next year.
Yes, Barbara.
Workman's comp, if I'm reading this correctly, I'm up about 37%. Did we have claims or what happened?
So we spoke to our insurance broker just to see if there was something unexpected happening there. They didn't see anything unusual. We think that because the way we wrote the budget is we looked at our actuals through December 31st and then projected them for the rest of the year. We think we were just front loaded on claims, workers' comp. So we're not expecting any dramatic increases as a normal course of action.
We accounted for the potential shedding of one administrative position and also filling another.
We did not. So the salary projections, we did them back in January.
But that this
This
not,
does not take
so
that.
this
into account.
reflects 2 assistant directors
And one library business
and
manager.
1 library business manager.
Mhm. And there's a couple of open vacancies in the library that we do expect to have filled going forward. So those are also taken into account.
Look at
Oh.
the end of it, you know, at the reserve, 117,000, that's, 2,000 of the revenue and the expenses, but the majority of that reserve comes from the increase. Cash, the increase, for like the storage tank that we have and the storage tank. So,
I attended the last budget meeting, and so I had asked to, in case this is of curiosity to other people, did we account for the fact that we recognize we probably have likely a costly repair to the skylight? And that is not figured into the budget because we've not been able to get a quote. However, this reserve funding that we have in here can be moved out of the reserve and used for that, because we know it's coming and we know it's something that absolutely needs to be dealt with. Yeah.
We anticipate 6 figures on that.
Yes.
Yep, Barbara.
Under professional fees, have we redone the contract with our attorney that is a 20% increase, or you're just anticipating?
So my apologies. I think this version still reflects $30,000 for professional fees attorneys. We actually are adjusting that to 25,000. The retainer is 20,000 annually and then 5,000 for things not covered by the contract. Again, based on projections, we originally bumped it up higher, but we don't think that's going to be accurate.
And the payroll service is 40% increase?
So there is an increase from us switching our payroll provider.
Will that continue to be 40% higher than the old one, or?
It should stabilize at this level. But there are not annual increases built in to the contract.
So what are we getting for the extra 40, almost?
software.
Yeah.
And hopefully on time
Yeah.
payments.
We did a vote and approve it months ago, right?
That was
Yeah.
a disaster with the old one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the new system is just much better, for lack of a better word.
Do we record upbeat in terms of the payments that we're due and owing staff people?
We have outstanding retirement payments, but we're hoping to resolve that this
They're
month.
still outstanding.
Yes.
Wow. Not good.
So in recognition of this is the first time that we're seeing this final draft. If folks want a few more minutes, just in terms of timing. I don't know if Tony was going to speak to that, but did somebody else plan to speak to that, or should I just share?
Yeah,
Okay.
for it.
Our April board meeting has been pushed back a week because of spring break. And that's actually past the deadline for when we need to have a budget approved so that it can get on ballot. So we are have the chance here to continue to review this until we're all comfortable and vote to pass this budget as is now. The other option would be that we would need to call a special meeting to approve the budget if we're unable to do it tonight. So I'm not trying to rush anyone. I'm just trying to present options.
Well, if we approve the budget so that it can get on the ballot, and then we find out we have to make adjustments, what's the process for that? We'd have to pull a special meeting and a special election?
Typically, I believe your process would be the board can vote to reallocate within the existing budget.
Within the budget that's been passed,
Yes.
but that means moving money around
So
from various places that, may not be a sanguine thing to do. I don't know the answer. I mean, we have a reserve fund, but is it true that a lot of it will be taken up by the roof issue?
It's likely that if the roof repair is as we fear it is, then that would take the lion's share
So
of it.
where would we be pulling money from?
That's the additional, the money that was going into reserves in this year's budget. We also have additional existing reserves
Okay.
that we have beyond that.
That we could access if
That
we
we
did
could access
move
if we
money
need.
around?
Yes, those are like that's our fund balance from previous years.
So we have
that
leftover
still have.
money.
Yes, we do.
It sounds like we might have, with the staffing changes, some buffer there anyway. So this is
Yeah.
not expected to go up, more likely to go down slightly, unless the roof is like astronomically expensive.
Right, I think if it gets to that point, then we'd have to discuss other options for repairing the roof.
Do we have we have no idea how much the roof is gonna cost?
We're still waiting.
What's the roadblock on the, like, you told us, just
Winter.
remind us.
Yeah, and winter is
Well,
now,
some people seemed unwilling to do it too, because for some weird reason.
it was a challenge for us to get people to respond to our requests to come and even look at the roof. We managed to get one through the architect firm and they had to keep pushing us off because of winter weather. I think we're past that. So
Okay. We should have.
we're in contact with them pretty much on a couple times a week basis to try to get it in here.
Well, I for one would be loath not to have a budget to present to the voters.
That's a little bit of a problem.
I think it's a big problem.
Yeah, it seems like y'all did your due diligence, so my 2 cents is this is fine with this attorney fee amended.
Yeah. There'd be one other amendment, I'm sorry, the only 2 changes, and since we approved the tax levy, that went down 5,000 and the tax levy went down when we did the actual calculations by about 4,000. So instead of being 4,487,633, it is what's on this sheet, which is 4,487,561. So it's like the 2 of those pretty much net out. I'm sorry, but I think if you do approve a tax levy, that's the exact number.
4,487,561.
No, 4,483,561. It's on.
It's on the proposed.
It's on the-
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry.
So that's
Okay.
correct.
So really, those 2 things do come very close to balancing out, and the difference would come from the reserve.
Reserves.
Yeah.
Either the old one or the new one.
The one proposed for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move it.
Okay, thank you for the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike P. Are there additional questions or comments about this?
Thanks for all the folks who did the work to make it a lot less painful this year around. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone that participated in this, so. So all in favor of the budget as presented to us, including those 2 adjustments on the budget detail, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
There any opposed? And no abstentions. Thank you all very much for, I think it made it easier knowing that this was a smooth process and it came to us very cleanly. So
George and Pete did the lion's share of the work. They did it.
Thank you to the budget people and Pete.
During that vacation, huh? You're in that vacation.
Georgia Salad.
I have that down, but I don't know.
We have 2 separate votes.
Okay, so there's actually a request for us to approve the tax levy amount as well. Let's just do it separate to make sure we've dotted our i's and crossed our t's. So the proposed levy, this is correct, 2.41%, right?
Yes.
So do we have a motion to approve the proposed levy increase of 2.41%?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Mike P. Second?
Second.
And thank you, Bill, for second. All in favor of that proposed levy increase of 2.41? Aye. Okay, no opposed, any opposed? And no abstentions. Thank you so much.
I just just a very quick question about that. I recall, and I don't recall the details, but I thought last year there was some language that we were presented with that was something that we were asked to, I don't remember if it came from our legal counsel or, but it was language in case there was a discrepancy between the calculated number and the number that was on the ballot, the number on the ballot and the actual, approved increase under the law to make sure that we were covered for that. And there was some specific language that we
Something like
voted on.
up to and a half.
I don't, I
So if,
don't know if anyone else remembers what I'm talking about.
this sounds familiar. So what I can say is that if we're okay with holding that into old business, while we are going through the committee reports, I'm gonna do a little research and try and find that language for us. Is that all right? Or,
Sure, yeah,
Okay.
I just,
no, that's
I
good.
didn't think of it before we were in the middle of this in the meeting, so.
Yep. Nope, thanks, Mike. And I vaguely recall what you're talking about, so I think I'm gonna be able to find it. Alish, personnel.
Personnel did not have anything to meet for, plus the timing was a little funny, but we should be back to our regularly scheduled meetings.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Bill, I saw that you submitted a facilities report. Do you have other things that you'd like to highlight or add to that?
No, just we met way back in the winter. And the big item on our discussion was we discussed with Scott Abraham, the farmer's market. In terms of contracts to stay the same, he's looking for a 3-year extension. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who talked about that in the past. We think it's a good idea to do that simply because it gives him a little bit of stroke with his vendors to show that this is a real thing. And to attract more vendors, it gives him a little bit more leeway to plan types of events that he wants to have here instead of just having a hot parking lot on a Sunday morning in August, do things to try and like bring in kids or, have like a chowder fest or a bratwurst fest or a taco fest or something of that nature. Bring in some, I think EVs was one thing to get dealerships to maybe send some cars in that people would look at here at the farmer's market. But he's got a number of ideas that he wants to try to develop, and if he's more sure that this is a place that he can be holding these things, he's probably got more leverage to develop. So we're recommending the 3-year approval, or the other terms, like I said, to stay the same. It does have a 5-day termination for any reason on our part, and the library facility will stay closed. We will continue to use porta potties, but that is, even though that's a less excellent solution than being able to use the library, just given our logistics, we just can't support anything more than that. So we had a unanimous agreement to recommend to the full board of trustees that we vote to approve contract term of 3 years, and with that done, Pete will take care of getting it issued and signed. So
Do we have a copy of the contract to approve? Does it need to be approved by the full board?
I believe it should be approved by the full board. We don't have an updated contract for 3 years. We would have to have our legal team draft that. With the contract that we had with him expired in October of 2024.
So you're just gonna be asking for that at the April meeting then?
at the April meeting, I thought we might have it for today, but
The terms are the same, including the cost the amount of money he will pay us per year.
I think the porta potty is the only different thing based on the discussion.
Yeah, we didn't write in an increase to the cost for his rent.
Okay, now, if I remember correctly, he paid upfront for the entire,
He did it in 2 payments. So he paid half upfront and then halfway through he paid the other half.
okay, and that will be the same terms,
Mhm.
and that will be in the contract.
other than that, we talked more about the core and still batting around ideas for that. The skylight, any prospect on getting the skylight pressure tested with this weather change we've had?
Yep, I'm hoping now that the weather has turned, we should be able to schedule them whenever they're available. We have not gotten a commitment yet. And as mentioned, there was a second leak in the skylight, same area of the building, different part of the skylight. We did have that repaired.
If I remember correctly, there was an issue, which I think we weren't able to resolve fully to our satisfaction regarding the insurance coverages that he has. Is that correct?
No, that was resolved.
It was
Yeah.
resolved. Okay.
So we put the onus on him to get insurance from the individual vendors. It was the auto thing that we kind of went back and forth
And we
on.
decided to forget that
No, so he actually asks
because he
the
said he had no
vendors,
cars or something.
well, he has no commercial vehicles.
Yeah, okay.
I don't even think he personally has a car himself,
Okay.
but all the vendors themselves have to hold their own auto
Auto.
or insurance for their property. So that was
So
what
it's
we
a vendor
passed.
directed insurance.
So, yeah, so that got resolved. And I'll just say, last year, we didn't have any issues either getting the payment from him or it was a pretty smooth year.
And our insurance broker is aware that we have on our premises. We just trying to
Yep, yeah, our
cross the
current,
Ts that the Is.
our current coverage is still valid from last year, which did include the farmer's
It
market.
does include. the-
Last item, just an observation on book sales. I went in and volunteered yesterday morning. A lot of good activity, but a ton of books coming in. And anybody who can help that's got subscription capability, that's appreciated by the people who do volunteer. It's not a fitness class.
For the mural, are you still gonna work with potentially Capital Walls or anything? Capital Walls, that's who we had started talking to. It's like a local organization that they like will cover some of the cost of like a muralist coming to paint. That's who we had initially started
We
talking
haven't
with.
talked with, we haven't followed up.
I reached back out to them.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing one wall in the library of a mural. So
Okay.
I'm gonna take a picture for them. They asked me to take a picture of the area we want. So,
Okay.
so I've reached back out to them.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some good ideas when Tim and I talked to them, but that was a while ago. I don't even know if it's the same guy, but it might be. But they gave us some different like artist styles to look at too. So just something to keep in mind that we'll have to give them some sort of criteria for who we'd want to work with.
There's another vendor who does the signage above our meeting rooms, Bachland. I might be mangling the pronunciation. But we were meeting with them about signage and they mentioned in passing that they had given us a quote back when we first did the renovation to provide wall art in that same spot. So we have a couple of vendors to work
Oh,
with for
cool.
possibilities.
Yeah, that was before my time, so I don't know who that is, but yeah. No, I know Capital Wall seemed good because it utilizes local artists, so I thought that was kind of cool. We keep them in the mix.
There's nothing else from facilities, governance?
Yes, governance did meet, there's minutes in your packet.
Do we
The,
have to do the resolution?
No, because we don't have the contract, right?
We're gonna wait for the contract.
We can wait.
You have a resolution. We're gonna wait to get. the
I guess we
contract.
have to. I thought we would have the
That's
contract.
fine. Sorry.
anyway, so the governance committee, this month, we were working on a new version of the public behavior policy. And I'll just, it was provided to everyone that the new the draft public behavior policy that the committee voted to bring to the board to move for the board to adopt. I'll give a little bit of background. This draft was an initial draft that we were working off of was put together by Pete and the staff of the library and then brought to us. And then we went through kind of line by line with Pete and the committee and made various amendments or, adjustments and edits and things to it. There were a couple kind of overarching goals. And one was to provide some kind of, the existing policy that is in place right now has kind of a list of prohibited behaviors in the library. It was to provide some more specificity and some additional examples of prohibited behavior that were not spelled out in the old policy, and to add some additional language along with that. Part of the purpose of this was to give the kind of staff on the ground more kind of confidence in their authority to enforce this policy on their own when things are happening in the library that are, that shouldn't be, that are disruptive and causing problems in the library, so that things don't have to be run all the way up the chain to Pete or someone high up in administration to deal with. So to give a little more specificity and give them the confidence that they are able to address these things, but also to add some language making clear that the overarching policies to prevent things that are causing disruption or interfering or obstructing with other patrons' use of the library or the staff's ability to do their jobs. And to make clear that this is an exclusive list, that if you're doing something that we haven't specifically spelled out here, but you're obstructing people from using the library, then that's something that can be addressed as appropriate. So that was kind of the big picture goals. And with that in mind, we made these changes. And so now the committee is moving that the board adopt this new revised public patron behavior policy.
Does everyone have a copy of it? I'm not sure. Was it in the packet?
Yeah.
Okay, great, perfect. Oh, I missed it, so.
And
Mine was clipped to the
we're
side.
happy to answer any questions. If anyone has questions about any, specific or general things.
I only had one thing that came to mind, and obviously I think we'd be accommodating, but there's sometimes people who are not neurotypical that might have like outbursts or things like that, where it could be considered loud or disruptive, but it's like
Yeah.
it's the.
And we discussed, and you also have the situation of, with the loud and disruptive behavior, small children, things like that, where there's going to be outbursts and things that happen. So we expect the library staff to kind of take that into account. But as to the specific issue, we added on, this is new, that wasn't in our existing, as immediately after this numbered list, we have this line about accommodations. So it's right after the last numbered thing on the list.
Oh, okay.
We specifically say that basically, accommodations will be made for legitimate medical needs, disabilities, or other extenuating circumstances, just to, to say that that will be taken into account. And this isn't, it's not, you do something that kind of, violates the letter of the law in one of these things, you're not immediately going to get out of the building. It's just, these are things that will be addressed, hopefully in a, as minimally disruptive manner as possible, just to keep things running smoothly, and that's the idea.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I must have
No,
missed
it's a
that one.
good question. If that is new, that wasn't in the previous version of the policy.
Cool. Sure.
Would there be it's a privilege that maybe revoke for up to 6 months? What's the decision making for something less than 6 months? How is that gonna be?
So typically, the way it's done in practice is that discretion is left to the director. I do feel that we need to apply more consistency there, just so there's not the appearance of, oh, so-and-so did an infraction, they only got banned for a day. So-and-so did the same thing, they got banned for a month. So I'd like to see in the future, as a practice, something like spelled out that says how we make these decisions, but the discretion is left to the director or their designee.
Is this something the safety committee would do if we had one? Or do we have a?
We do not currently have a safety
Okay.
committee. It could be something that they would talk about.
Okay.
You would document the
Correct.
incident and the reasoning behind the period of time.
Correct.
And then you would maintain some internal consistency.
Mhm.
So if it was ever brought into question, it could be justified.
Right, there would be a paper trail of the incident report, the conversations with the person, et cetera.
Do you know about how many people are under some form of suspension with the existing policy?
Since I've come in May of 2024, I believe it's less than 5, probably 3 or 4 people currently. It is not an everyday occurrence.
Right, I usually just say that this gives a lot of stroke to the support of the staff that works here. We'll have to see how, with this written stroke, how it's actually employed and what the community reaction to it is, so.
No, I think this is great, and this sets establishes a really good policy for which the library staff can develop the procedures that it's implemented for. So thank you for your work on this. Did the governance committee vote on moving this forward?
We voted to move this. to
Okay,
full board.
perfect. So we already have a motion for this. Do we have a second from someone not on governance?
Second.
Okay, Mike P, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Okay, since there are none, then I would ask for us to vote on approving the rules of public behavior coming from the governance committee. All in favor? Any opposed? No abstentions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Long range planning, and I have to have an apology for myself because I forgot to submit a written report. But the long range planning committee did meet to review the responses from the survey that came from both the staff and the board. We looked at areas that caught us a little bit off guard, those that weren't surprising, and where there was crossover between the board and the staff views. And we are currently now working on an activity survey as a follow-up for both the board and the staff to help prioritize within those. And then we are also using some of the responses from that and based on our conversation to discuss a prioritization survey that allows us to communicate with the community. So we are looking to work on that a little bit more at our next meeting. The Long Range Planning Committee is set to meet the first Tuesday of every month at 5:30. So if anybody is interested in participating, but we'll be discussing how that community survey is going to work and where we're moving from there next week or next month. Narina is not here, but if anyone else is here from board development, if you have anything to share. All is quiet, so I'm assuming there was no meeting. Is there anything, Mike, to report from the cafe investigation?
We have not met. Since all of the committee members are here right now, I'd like to ask each of them just before you leave tonight, touch base with me. And I'd like to try and see if there's a time either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday next week where we can meet on one of those 3 days to finally wrap this up and be done with it. So please, before you go, just touch base with me and see if there's a date that works. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Elise, do you have anything to report on from your role as liaison to the foundation?
Fortunately, the foundation meeting was during our board meeting again. I don't know, did they follow up with you? I didn't see a follow-up email on like the outcome of the meeting.
They did, I will forward that to you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Do you want to tell me what was in it or us what was in it?
I don't want to speak to it before I've shared it with you.
Oh, okay.
Nothing interesting, but I don't want to overstep.
Oh, fair. Okay.
I can do a brief report from Upper Hudson for those of you that are aware and plugged into the area's library system. We are in the process of hiring a new executive director as Tim Burke is winding down his time, and that is moving along quickly. Hope to have somebody else in place. The other big piece that I did want to mention is we have like very exciting news and that people were putting forward to the state more funding for libraries, and it looked like we were going to be in a great position. And then recently, IMLS, which is the Institute of Museums and Library Services, which is a federal agency, has been directed to close up operations and or significantly downsize. That has really a lot of direct impacts beyond the federal government. It moves on to the state governments because New York State's library gets federal funding through that then they use to award grants and additional funding to public libraries. So it trickles from federal to state to region, our system, and potentially down to Guilderland. So we know there's a lot of big changes going on in the government right now, but it is something to be aware of that this could, it definitely will have an impact on libraries in our system. And we do care about cooperating with them, and it could potentially have an impact on Guilderland. I'm going to forward you a letter after the meeting that came late today from the state librarian that kind of explains this just a little bit more, but I will share that with all of you. So you could just be aware of how these impacts sort of trickle down and might have a direct impact on Guilderland Public Library.
Is there any discussions of putting together a paper, raising a protest if this comes to pass?
I will also forward you there are several groups that are organizing letter writing and things like that. So I'm going to forward all that information to you all as well, encouraging you to reach out, speak to your representatives and say, like, I care about libraries. This is how libraries have helped, and this is why we should continue to fund them and consider them an integral role in our society. So I will share all of that information with you via email after the meeting. Anything else from committees that was missed? Okay, on to old business. We discussed at the last meeting the statement on library support of our community. I believe Alish and Pete and Carolyn worked on putting this together, and I know it was distributed, and there was some feedback just briefly on how to look at that. But I'm going to turn it over to who wants to take the lead on this conversation.
I can take the lead on it. I know we did have a couple people chime in via email. Did everyone get a chance to read it? Okay. So it seems like there was an ask to just put the mission statement in full at the top of the statement and start the statement off that way, and to drop the sentence "in uncertain times," because we're basically supporting this statement regardless and ongoing. So did anybody else have any other input from this statement that they'd like to consider? I don't personally have an issue with either of those two things.
Just on the first, if we're, I'm just not exactly clear on how that will look. If we move the mission statement to the top, how's that? Like,
For the purpose of public record and the recording and those that don't have a packet, I can read it as it would exist with the two changes Alish made, because that's what we'll be voting on, and then it will have been read aloud. Do you want to do that, or someone else can read it? Yeah, somebody that really excelled in reading class.
it's fine with me. I just wasn't totally clear on what that looks like.
So because what you're proposing is just, this is first, new paragraph, and then we start.
And then we take off the "in uncertain times" and just be the Guilderland Library
Remains unwavering.
remains unwavering in our dedication, blah, blah, blah. So
Wait, so what's the mission
So
statement?
the mission statement is: the mission of the Guilderland Public Library is to provide equal access to physical and digital materials, programs, and services to our community for lifelong learning, cultural enrichment, and enjoyment. And then we would move into: Guilderland Public Library remains unwavering in our dedication to our mission of providing equal access to materials, programs, and services to our community for lifelong learning, cultural. Now that I'm saying this, are we repeating that?
Yeah,
Phrase.
that's what I was wondering. What was wrong with that statement being incorporated, our mission
Okay.
statement? I don't see where we need to
So,
cut it.
so I mean, alternatively, it could just be the mission statement, which I read, and then Guilderland Public Library remains unwavering in our dedication to our mission. No matter what changes or challenges arise, our commitment to serving our community remains the same.
That was what I had in mind when I made that
Okay.
suggestion. I
gotcha.
just think it's important, actually, I think it's important to put the mission statement at the top of almost everything we put out, to tell you the truth, so that people understand what it means. So the way you read it just now, Corey, was the way I envisioned,
Okay.
Okay.
because otherwise we'd be repetitive, I would agree.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So then the follow-up from that is: libraries are more than just buildings with books. They are dynamic places where people come together to learn, discover, and connect. They serve as a hub of creativity, collaboration, and inspiration. Libraries are for everyone, and we are dedicated to fostering a welcoming space for all. Now and always, we stand to inspire curiosity, support learning at every stage of life, and bring people together through the power of information and shared experiences. Guilderland Public Library is here for you today, tomorrow, and for generations to come. To support our mission, we are proud to offer a variety of programs designed to inspire and educate the community we serve, helping shape a brighter future for all. So that is the length of the statement that we're looking at here for changes and to decide if we want to.
Not to necessarily enlarge this. I like the statement as it is, but the reason I asked Amy to read those 5 points is something maybe we want to think about and putting it in here. It may be redundant, I don't know, but if those points were made by library associations, it might be interesting to put it in. But I just opened it up as a question.
Well, and something Corey mentioned last time, which might be good for consideration, is just periodically we issue things like this. So maybe
But this
because because we had discussed not urgency, but like a timeliness of putting something out and then without having to rewrite it and reassess, then this could be maybe part of in a few months or quarterly or however often we want to do this, have something like that and mention that we're in alignment with, you know.
I'm fine with it as it is, with the changes that
Okay.
Corey read. I just thought at some point, those
No, I think it's a
5
good
points
point. Yeah,
should be incorporated in a future statement.
yeah, for sure. I think that's a good point.
I personally thought it was heartening to hear from Maria and Eileen and their support also making a statement, making a statement about this. Are there other discussion that we want to have surrounding this? Okay, do we have a motion to approve this statement on behalf of the Board of Trustees to be released as read?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mike P. A second. Barbara, appreciate it. Okay, there's no other discussion, then we'll call for a vote. So all in favor of approving the statement from the board, please raise your hand.
As you read it, right?
As I read it, yes, as I read it. Any opposed? And no abstentions. Wonderful. I believe the follow-up in this is Pete is going to work with Caroline to communicate this out to the public. We've had interest from other folks, and so this will be disseminated.
Pointedly put it out to our state representatives and our federal representatives.
I appreciate y'all working with me on this. It means a lot to me that you guys. Thank you so much. And to Caroline for meeting with Pete and I and getting to that so quickly. She wrote it way better than I ever could. So she's the marketing person. So I appreciate it.
So we have 2 different sections of new business tonight because a portion of that is dealing with what needs to happen in executive session, but we do have a motion that is on the table. Pete, could you offer some words about this motion, about the resolution to appoint, like where this came from?
Actually, if I could, I'd like to defer to Assistant Director Natalie Hurto.
Okay.
Can you speak to the resolution appointing?
Really fast. Did we want to do the levy language? Was that?
I was unable to find anything.
Oh,
Okay.
But I know it exists.
Yes, so we can follow up with Aaron, and if we need to approve it in April, just,
okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we had to move on to the next.
That should be on the old budget, right?
I was trying to look at all those minutes and I looked at emails from Aaron, I couldn't find anything.
Okay.
Basically like codifying what took place like, I think a year ago. I think the current language just says assistant director,
Okay,
but,
so it's that we're adding Allison to the previous resolution.
so it's like I'm like the main person, and then if it happens to involve me for whatever reason, then it would go to Allison.
Thanks for the clarification. So the request is that we pass the motion to pass the resolution appointing Assistant Director Natalie Hurto with HR Manager Allison, I apologize. Jadav, thank you, as backup, as anti-discrimination and anti-harassment compliance officers. Do we have a motion to pass that resolution?
Move.
Thank you, Elish. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Marcia, appreciate it. Is there any questions, discussions on that? Okay, all in favor of the motion to pass the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions? Wonderful. So we have now allotted a second time for Mike. Did you find something?
Oh, no, I just, before we move on from new business, I had a
Oh,
couple.
yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I have two things and they're just very quick, but one is I want to kind of raise an issue, flag an issue that we're going to need to address, just to put it out there. But it was this issue that George brought to my attention, which is that according to our bylaws, officers, and the treasurer is included among the definition of the officers in there, are limited to serving 3 years in that position. And George will shortly be term limited out of his position. Now, he has expressed a willingness to stay on longer if he were allowed to, but our bylaws right now do not permit that. So we are going to need to make a decision, which is either that we say that provision really is more intended for the trustee positions to make sure there's a rotation of trustees in the officer position and not a volunteer non-trustee who's helping us as a treasurer, especially given how hard it is to find somebody qualified and, you know, and willing to put in the time and do that position. And maybe we need to amend our bylaws in order to make that not apply to the treasurer position and only to the trustee. Or if we think that that is important, then we need to start looking for a new treasurer because we're going to, George is going to be out of a job soon, unfortunately, due to the bylaws. So I'm flagging that. I don't know if this is something, if people are amenable to changing the bylaws in some way to omit the treasurer from that term limit. That could be thrown to the governance committee to try and do a draft of new language for that. We have, you know, I guess a little bit of time. The bylaws changes we're supposed to present a month before we vote on them. So if we wanted to vote on this by the June meeting, we'd need to have something by the May meeting that we could put out there for the committee. So we have time to do this. So that's one approach. But I just wanted to throw that out there to people so that we can address this one way or another.
Would your preference be to interpret the treasurer as not included in that or to amend the bylaws to explicitly state it?
Me?
Yeah, I mean, or anyone.
As I read, it just seems to me that, you know, it refers to officers a whole bunch of times and it specifically defines the officers as being the 3 board members and the treasurer as an officer. So, I mean, I don't know if it was anticipated when the bylaws were originally drafted or whatever, that this is a volunteer outsider or whatever, but I think it's kind of the best, you know, the kind of most fairest reading of it is the treasurer is, whether it makes sense or not, the treasurer is included in that term limit, I think. I think that's how I read it, at least.
Why doesn't the governance committee take a look at the bylaws, see if we can come up with some kind of cogent argument to interpret it most favorably so that he's not included in the 3 years? And if we can't, come up with language to amend the bylaws.
I'm happy to, you know, to have the governance committee take a crack at, you know, we'll look at the language, kind of see what we think, and if necessary, propose some modified language and, you know, unless people feel that there's a different way we should address this.
I mean, I assume George is willing to.
Said at least for now. You know,
I don't want to put you in an awkward position.
if my 3 years were up a year ago, I would be looking forward to retirement. But I think there's a lot of good things happening now, and I think I could help Pete with that. And he asked me if I'd be interested, and it's like,
So you could serve forever if we amend the bylaws.
well, and I think you have to have a way to get rid of the treasurer when they
We could figure that part
when
out,
they
but I don't think that's.
no longer are useful, basically, so.
I would
Who
love
knows
to
what-
turn it over to the governance committee to
Yeah.
come back with a recommendation, and I would also very much appreciate George staying on. So you can, if you want him gone, you can voice your opinions to me outside.
Yeah, well,
Only kidding.
I suggest that.
Think you get a bylaw amendment.
We need to present it to the board for a meeting before we actually vote on it. So if we present it in May, we could vote on it in June, and then July, he could be reappointed for the next year.
Don't we have to, who approves the bylaws? It doesn't have to go to,
I mean, we could have Aaron review the language.
only us that approves the bylaws.
Yeah, no, that's just internal.
Yeah, we just.
So we need I think it was a 2/3.
I think it's a 2/3. I don't have it in front of me. It's a super majority, so.
And Mike, you mentioned a second?
Yeah, the secondly, very quick, I'm just, we've got the election coming up. And I know last year we had those vacancies that arose very late and so we ended up with a situation where we had more vacancies that weren't on the ballot. And so we had that whole situation. I just wanted to, like, as on my notes and going through, it looks to me like we have 4 seats coming up for election this time, which is Marcia and Marina, whose terms are up. And then there's me and the other Mike, who are both only in a 1-year temporary position, and that'll leave 4 seats open, 2 of which will be, by my count, full 3-year terms. 1 will be 2 years remaining on an existing term, and 1 will be 1 year remaining on an existing term. That's the number, and I can show I've got a spreadsheet where I've been tracking all the seats and which ones have how much time or whatever. So, but I wanted to flag that just to make sure that everybody's on the same page in the library, because there was, when I first started, the year we first started, there was confusion about how long the different terms were because it had gotten confused after a bunch of resignations at weird times and things like that. So there wasn't even clarity about how much time was supposed to be left in various terms. We eventually had to go back through minutes of previous year's meetings to kind of straighten it out and figure out how the terms all were supposed to line up. So I just wanted to flag that to kind of make sure everybody's on the same page, and that when the ballots go out, it says the right thing as far as how many seats there are and how many years are left on them or whatever. So I'm just flagging that. And I can talk to you if you want to see my numbers, and we can kind of make sure that they match up. I don't know what kind of records you guys have of that or whatever.
Yep.
That's all.
Perhaps if you could just share that information with us before it goes out to the school, just so we
Yes.
can see what's on there. And
Yep, we've got about a month until that deadline, so we've got a little time.
Perfect.
I just, with all the people on the ballot this spring, they be stepping into the new 3-year terms, is that what happens?
So the under our bylaws, if there's any partial terms, if there are any terms end early, then the election only fills the remainder of that partial term. It doesn't get a full 3-year term. So there are 2 seats right now that are being filled on a temporary basis by appointments. That's me and the other Mike. And so when this year is up for those, there's still time left. There's 1 more year on one of those seats and 2 more years on the other of those seats. So those would not be filled as new 3-year terms. Those would just be filling the remaining 2 years on an old 5-year term and the last 1 year of an old 5-year term. Now, Norina and Marcia's 5-year terms are up, and they will be replaced with new 3-year terms for the new.
Marina had 4.
What? Oh, that's right. Marina had 4. That's right. That's right. She was filling 4 years of a 5-year term originally. That's right.
Full 5.
Yeah.
Right, but those 2 will be new 3-year terms, and then the ones we're in right now will be a 1 and a 2 year remaining on old terms.
Yes.
If anybody wants to see, I can show the spreadsheet and kind of
Because
make
you're
sense.
temporary.
Following you.
1 year.
Our temporaries are only 1 year.
Even though you're on a longer term.
Right, exactly.
You didn't get the 12.
Exactly.
I
But
appreciate you flagging that because that was an issue last year with the elections.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, like, so everybody, if anybody has any I'm happy to show my numbers to anybody and we can kind of go through and everything, but just so anybody who has any questions, we can kind of iron it all out and make sure when it goes out on the ballot, it says the right thing and everybody,
Yeah.
everybody's happy. That's all.
Thank you for preemptively looking into that, Mike. Appreciate it. Any other new business? We have set aside time for public input here as well. Do we have any public input? Okay, if there is no public input, this is our first time including in the agenda a 5-minute time slot that we've allotted in case there are any board members that would like to make comments. Are there any comments from the board?
Kind of cheated already and said my comment, but I'll just reiterate, thank you for y'all's support on the statement. It means a lot. I should have saved it for this, but I kind of blurted it out before. So that's my official board comment, time comment.
Special recognition for David Gillen, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful.
I mean, Barbara said it before, but.
How many years?
I believe 7.
7?
Yep, 7 and change, depending on how you count it.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, David.
Okay, so we have need this evening of an executive session to discuss a personnel matter related to specific personnel. So at this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to move into executive session. Thank you, Barbara and Alish for the second. All in favor of moving to executive session, please say aye.
Hi.
Okay. So the public portion of the meeting is concluded for this time until we re-adjourn.
All right.
Was that, did Alicia second, did you second that motion?
Yeah, I did.